growing is no longer what we need to do. We need now to become sustainable. We need to take responsibility for our impacts and learn to enjoy ourselves. You know, relax a little bit about this growth stuff and you know, appreciate living and manage the world as if we want to stay. Manage it as if our children and grandchildren matter. Now, why is it that the economic system has to expand? And this struck me in 1990 when we went into recession, and somebody explained a recession is mostly just standing still. It's not a significant contraction, that's a depression, but just a standing still. So 1989 had been the greatest volume of goods and services ever produced in history. Bigger than last year, bigger than last year. It's just the nature of a growing thing. 1990 was the same record volume, but because it wasn't bigger, we had hard times. And having done 2 books on sustainability, I realized we have to stabilize, if not contract considerably on our impacts, the amount of resources we're using and the waste we create. So I started studying economics and ecological economics, and that's what led eventually to Life, Money, and Illusion. It was a 15-year project to research it and write it. And there's a half a dozen different reasons for why the system has to grow, and they mostly are intertwined, different ways of looking at the same thing. But the one I'll tell you about, because it's easier to grasp, is best explained by a little story about 4 cowboys who've been out on the range all day, and they're hot, and they're tired, and they're thirsty. They want to go to the bar and drink beer and play cards before they go home. So they go to the bar, they order their beer, and they ask the bartender, "Could we borrow a deck of cards?" The bartender says, "Sure, I'll lend you a deck of cards, but I want your holster, your saddle, or something as collateral to make sure you'll give me back the cards at the end of the night. I'll give you each 13 cards, which is a deck divided by 4, and at the end of the night, I want you each to give me back 14 cards, 1 extra for interest." So you can picture, you know, a problem that these guys are going to have, right? And you may wonder what that has to do with our economic system. The money that we buy and sell things with is created through loans. It's loaned into existence. Coins and bills make up 2 or 3% of the money supply. They're manufactured, spent into circulation, and we can make change. But the vast majority of the money we use is created when loans are taken out. And the way it works is if you've got a business plan and you go to the bank and you say, "I need $100,000 to set up my business, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'll pay you back." Banker looks it over and says, "Good plan, think you can do it." Then go to the vault and get you $100,000 of depositor's money. It just writes a line of credit. Might have ink molecules in it. Most likely it's just electrons on a hard drive. But you can start writing checks for labor, for materials, for rent, whatever you need to make your business go. And the people receiving those checks can cash them or deposit them like any check you've ever had. That's how money is created. And as the loan is paid back, it disappears again. The problem is that 14th card. The bank created $100,000, put that into circulation, but they want $110,000 back, or whatever the interest requirement is. And they didn't create the extra 10,000. So for there to be enough money in circulation for you to pay off your loan, somebody else has to take out another loan and get that money in circulation. And for them to pay their loan, there has to be another wave of loans outside of that. And for them to pay their loans, another wave. And every year, more money has to be borrowed for businesses and houses and cars than the year before, or there's just not enough money for everybody to pay off their loans with the interest. So that's the motive power of the rat race. Anybody who's had a mortgage on a house or a business or anything knows that if you miss a couple payments, you could lose it all. So it's a great stimulus for growth. Everybody scrambles to try to pay it off. Even big companies with lots and lots of money use what they've got to leverage more loans so that they can expand. And everybody's sort of scrambling. That's where the analogy breaks down, because cowboys can't make cards. But we do make wealth. We take substances of a lesser value, make more valuable things out of them, and in the process we're creating wealth. But because we've been doing this for so long and expanding with such consistency for so long, we're now stretching planetary limits. We're stretching the availability of natural resources. We're stretching the ability to absorb the waste that we create in the process of our wealth creation activities. Now, this is not a new situation. It dates back to the 80s. When the savings and loan thing started up. It was a place where investments could be made to make the money grow that didn't actually have a foundation in the material world. That went sour, and the junk bond thing sort of started to come up, and then the dot-com bubble, and then the real estate expansion, and then the subprime mortgages. After the 9/11 event in the United States, George Bush got on the television and he talked to the American people. He says, "We're under attack. Get together with your families. Go to the mall and shop." And I'd heard that, you know, up here in Canada. Don and I were touring in the States this summer and to hear people testify to hearing their leader come onto the TV when they're under attack and tell them go shopping, really sunk it in. It was quite striking. But the logic is that if people hold on to their money because they're afraid, and it doesn't continue to circulate so that the loans can be paid off, then you've got an economic recession to deal with on top of whatever the situation was that had hit in the media. They didn't shop enough. And so they lowered the interest rate to practically nothing to encourage people to borrow money. And they started to offer mortgages for houses without even needing a down payment. They didn't even ask if you have a job. But every time somebody says, I want a house, go to the bank, they get $300,000, that money went into circulation to fill in this enormous need for monetary expansion, which the system requires. Like, it had been growing long enough that the exponential increase, something to the tune of $400 billion a year now in North America, new business has to be created every year. Couldn't do it with a material foundation, so they do it with creative bookkeeping. And of course, when the interest rates went up to control inflation from the high oil prices, then it was discovered that people couldn't pay these subprime mortgages and the bubble burst. Now, we need to find another way of managing it. We can't, they're going to try to recreate the growth thing and to build it back up, and we'll just bump into the oil reserve problem or the climate problem or any one of these situations that results from our size, and then we'll have to go through another round until we decide that rather than making expansion our purpose, that our purpose is to become sustainable, to find some way of managing mutual provision, which is another way of saying the economy. It's just people take care of each other. We always have. Managing that in a way that we can keep the material cycling. Like in the thing with the knot, if you take the ends of the rope and join them together, that's what organic agriculture is about. You take the human waste, the kitchen waste, the garden waste, anything else that will rot down, feed it to the soil thrives, produces food. The only thing lost is energy when we radiate, when we metabolize our food and the sun comes down. And the same thing with our larger body, where we have clothing and buildings and tools that we bring into our cultural body for a while and then pass out. We have to close the cycles there. And that's the recycling. There's all sorts of programs to encourage getting the materials back to where they can be used again. And as I said, just not working with toxic substances. So I'm getting messages that I've just about filled my time. I can talk for 20 hours, but for only $20, you could have the whole story here. I'll just say one more thing, which is this notion of legitimacy and what the question of direction is about. Is somehow we have to communicate to the population that the time of growing is over, and it's time now to aim for sustainability. That's the basic question. We need to establish that the sustainability is the legitimate goal of society. Because right now, to be a good citizen, your job is to earn and spend as much money as possible. To be an exemplary citizen, max out your credit card, like get money circulating. When that shift has taken place, then your job and the job of anybody who wants to belong to society, which we clearly and dearly need to be safe, we don't do well by ourselves, will be to live lightly on the earth. We'll compete with each other to see who can maintain quality health and exuberance on a minimum material impact, who can enjoy living the most, and who can pass, manage the world in a way that we can pass on to our children and grandchildren. When that legitimacy shifts, then it'll be what everybody's trying to do. Just like everybody's trying to make money now, it can be, if this is recognized as what our goal as a society is, to try to minimize damages and maximize the enjoyment we get from life and pass the world on. So I'll leave it there. There's so many things I'd love to go on about, but that's the time I've got.